Welcome to the Holistic Living Podcast, my beautiful friends. You can expect my uncensored, real, and honest thoughts on a wide variety of health topics. If you love to learn on ways to improve your health, your life, your mindset, your emotions, and everything in between in a natural way, you are in the right place, and I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to episode 36 of the Holistic Living Podcast. Today, I want to talk about cycle syncing. Essentially, it's when you change your lifestyle habits, specifically diet and exercise, the types of routines that you do to match the phases of your menstrual cycle and the energy levels that you have at that time. By doing this, it allows you to become more in tune with your hormonal needs, and you can better manage your cycle and the symptoms that typically come through each phase of a woman's cycle. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I don't have any script this time. Normally I'd like to type out a little bit and then kind of read from a bit of a script to keep me on track. So I hope I don't forget any important notes or points after you guys listen to this podcast. If you ever have any questions on any of the topics that I chat about, you can always reach me through my social media and ask your questions. The other thing is that for those who are new here, first of all, welcome. My name is Marla, and I'm a holistic nutritionist and homeopathic practitioner. And I actually have PCOS and used to have really underactive thyroid and major hormonal imbalances, including estrogen toxicity. So I have dealt with my own struggles in terms of hormones. And at the time, I wasn't educated on what I should have been doing during different parts of my cycle to support my hormonal needs at that time. I was kind of just, my lifestyle and the way that I was eating was just the same throughout every single day. For men, that's totally fine. They don't really have the fluctuations in their hormones that women do. And for women, we really need to be more in tune with our bodies because there are certain things we should be doing during different times of our cycle in order to have an optimal hormonal balance. So that's what we're chatting about today. Now, I talked about seed cycling. This was something that I actually made a whole post on my blog, holisticspring.com/blog. You guys can search seed cycling there to find some information on what it is and how to do it. But essentially, it helps you bring your cycle more back into balance, especially for those who have PCOS or cycle irregularities. It just helps to bring more of a regularity between periods, and also with the hormones and the symptoms like PMS that come with cycle irregularities. So seed cycling is something that I always encourage women to do. And of course, really focusing on nutrition as much as possible. The topic for today is going to focus more actually on fitness because I would say I don't call myself a gym rat, but I'm in the gym almost every day. And it's something that I can't live without. And I get stressed if I don't get to go. But I'm not your typical gym rat, quote unquote. I just love to move my body because for me, it's the mental aspect and the energy boost that I get. So if I skip a gym day, which I typically do maybe once or twice a week, I usually try to go 5 to 6 times a week. So on the days that I'm skipping, or even if I'm sick or just have a hectic day because I got 4 kids, and I don't go, I find that I'm exhausted through the day. I can't get off the couch for the most part. I'm super tired. When I start my day off with movement at the gym, I'm so energized and I feel like I can accomplish 10,000 times more things than I normally would. And I feel like my step is lighter. I just feel better all around. And so for me, that's kind of what gets me to the gym and what keeps me there and makes me want to always go. Obviously, it's nice to look good and feel fit and healthy. And I like having fitness goals. I like feeling like I'm getting stronger or I can jump higher, run faster, of course. But the biggest thing that's really driving me is that I feel less anxious and more energized. But something that I need to be careful with, especially with PCOS, is how I'm training and the type of training that I'm doing in different times of the month. So one question that I get asked very frequently is how are your hormones staying in balance if you're working out so hard? So that's what I want to talk about today. In terms of cycle syncing, we're going to focus on the fitness side because I get most of those questions. If you guys are interested in what seed cycling is and how to eat for your cycle, you can find those posts on my blog. All right, so I want to break down the different phases of a woman's cycle. So we have 4 phases essentially that we usually kind of break our cycle into. Anyone can really benefit from cycle syncing, especially changing your workouts to the time of the month that you're in. If you have PCOS, if you're overweight, if you're overly fatigued, if you have low iron, if you want to get your libido back, if you lost your period, if you want to conceive, these are really big reasons to really pay attention to the part of the cycle that you're in and then what movement you're doing. Now, I am a huge advocate for tracking your cycle. Every time I meet with a client who's a female, I will tell her, you've got to track your cycle. Even if they don't have hormonal imbalances per se, it is so helpful to use your basal body temperature and other fertility signs like your discharge and things like that to determine and predict where you're at in your cycle. So physically, you can be in tune with your body, and any cues that your body gives you will make a lot more sense if you know where you're at in your cycle. So what are the 4 phases? We have the menstrual part of our follicular phase. This is typically, if we're talking about a 30-day cycle, okay? Typically days 1 to 5. Some women will bleed for 7 days, some bleed for 3. So it's 1 to 5, 1 to 7. Typically is when we're in the menstrual part of the follicular phase. This is really where estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. The lining of the uterus, it's called the endometrium, is shed, and that's what causes the bleeding if you did not get pregnant that cycle. After days 1 to 5, we move into like the full follicular phase. This is typically like day 6 to day 14 approximately. And this is where your estrogen and progesterone are on the rise. So after you finish bleeding and your period is over, this is typically where estrogen and progesterone will start to rise. And then we move into our ovulatory phase. The ovulatory phase is typically a couple days only. It's usually around days 15 to 17, give or take. And this is where estrogen will peak. Okay, so testosterone and progesterone will also rise at this time. Usually, our temperature drops quite a bit around or after ovulation. And then if you're tracking your temperature with a basal body thermometer, and then it spikes a day or 2 after ovulation, and then will stay high for the remainder of the cycle, which is our luteal phase. The luteal phase is typically days 18 to 28 or 30. And this is where estrogen and progesterone levels are high. Okay, so this is what causes our temperature to be higher. If the egg is not fertilized, hormonal levels will decrease or drop, and the menstrual cycle starts again with us bleeding from days 1 to 5. So that's roughly what the women's cycle is like. Now, some women will have cycles that are 40, 50, 60, 90 days, 120 days. I used to have cycles that were like 4 months long. Okay, so obviously the phases will change if you have a hormonal imbalance, specifically the ovulatory phase. What causes the cycle to be long is anovulation or missed ovulation. So usually we'll have our follicular phase and that will be always steady. It's the ovulatory phase that very often will extend a woman's cycle, especially if you have PCOS. Our luteal phase is almost always approximately 14 to 16 days. Our menstrual phase is always typically 1 to 7 days. So it's really the ovulatory phase that alters how long our cycle will be. If you have a lot of stress, if you have PCOS, if you just eat like a lot of sugar, so you have insulin resistance, if you have progesterone issues, high androgens or testosterone, and the list goes on, it will cause you to miss your ovulation. So you unsuccessfully ovulate. You'll notice you start getting the fertility symptoms. You might start having excess discharge and the symptoms that come with it, maybe a little bit of cramping, or you might start feeling like more pressure from your ovarian cysts if you have them around this time. But then if you miss that ovulatory period, if it doesn't successfully ovulate, then your body will try to move into the luteal phase. It won't be successful, and then it'll try to ovulate again. So it'll delay your cycle by weeks and weeks and weeks, as many times as you need to ovulate. Once you successfully ovulate, then you can move into the luteal phase, and then your period will come. So this is really where tracking your cycle can be helpful if you have an irregular cycle, because it'll tell you when you can expect your ovulation, when you can expect your period, and what is happening in your cycle with the irregularities. So once you have become comfortable tracking your cycle in like a calendar form, it can be so empowering to just know, because you can start to really predict. You really learn your body and your body's symptoms and cues, and you can start to really predict your mood, your food cravings, and everything else that happens during your cycle. So you want to always listen to your body to maximize your fitness. As women, we are often taught to fight pain, push harder through that extra workout, avoid, skipping workouts if you're not feeling it. Don't complain, get it done. But we're not really doing ourselves any favors when it comes to being fit if we are not focusing on our hormones. Because if we have a hormonal irregularity, everything in our body's off. Okay, our thyroid is off. We can start losing hair. We can start gaining weight around our abdomen. We'll have a bad mood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's so important, if you're really wanting to have a good fitness routine, to pay attention to your hormones. As your hormones fluctuate, so can your energy. Like I said, your mood. It'll affect how your body may approach fitness. So the cycle syncing method is really beneficial because it allows you and teaches you how to switch up your workouts based on your menstrual cycle and not focus on pushing it every single day. I used to do that years ago. I was always a person, since I was like old enough to work out, I was always a person that worked out, and I worked out hard and I worked out a lot. And it didn't matter, again, where I was in my cycle. Didn't matter if I was tired. It didn't matter if I was energized, if I had low iron and felt like I was going to faint. Didn't matter. I just worked out the same. And sometimes my body was giving me all the cues that I just needed to stop and rest and not push myself that day. And I didn't take those cues, and I would push myself, and it destroyed my cycles. It destroyed my hormones. It destroyed my skin and everything else, because my body was like screaming for me to just stop pushing it so hard. So now I work out in a very strategic way to work alongside my hormones and treasure and take care of my hormonal balance versus ignoring it. So I'm going to share with you a very, very general guideline of possible exercise intensities that may be beneficial during your hormonal fluctuations around your cycle. Keeping in mind that every woman's cycle is a different length. And if you do have irregular cycles or PCOS where you have like really long gaps between your period, you're going to need to track your cycles using like the calendar method and the thermometers to get your temperature, so that you can know when you're truly in your follicular or your ovulatory or your luteal phase. Okay. So I can tell you your ovulatory phase is day 14 to, or 15 to 17. But if you have PCOS, it might be day 40 to 43. Okay. So you need to track your cycles. And then when you're in your ovulatory phase is when you're going to follow these guidelines. When you're in your luteal phase, you'll follow the guidelines, etc. So in our menstrual phase, obviously you're bleeding, you're probably going to have some cramping or just like lower energy, not feel like you want to push it. So this is where light movements may be the best. For me, again, I'm using myself as a reference here because I'm a woman. I have so many hormonal imbalances that I can really give you guys some insights from my own personal experience. So for me personally, when I get my period, I have no pain. I've done so many detoxes and lowered my inflammation and all those good things that I used to have like debilitating cycles. I no longer get that. I have no pain. What I do have though is, because I have really low iron, it's something I've battled with my whole life. I have a very hard time getting through my period because I feel like I'm going to faint all the time, losing a lot of blood and already having low iron. So it's a really hard time for me energy wise. What I like to do is I pretty much cut all my workouts in half. I'll still go to the gym. I'll lift weights, but I'm lifting lighter weights. So normally on, for example, on a hip thrust, if I'm going to do a hip thrust on like my best day where I have the best energy and, all of that, feel great, I'll do about 260 pound hip thrust. On my period, I'm probably doing about 100 pounds maximum. Most of the time though, I'll skip it. because I don't want anything over my uterus or my ovaries during that time. I'll do more things like lunges, squats, or entirely skip lower body and just focus on some lighter upper body movements. What I do the most during my menstrual cycle is walking. So a lot of times I will skip the weights entirely and just go on the treadmill for 30 minutes a day and just get my steps in. In the summer, I'll go like walk along the canal. So I'm focusing more on the lighter movements. If I am going to lift weights, I'm lifting lighter than I normally do. I'm focusing mostly on upper body. I'm trying to avoid anything that's going to put pressure on my uterus or my ovaries. So hip thrusts, things like that, my pelvic floor. And I'm overall not pushing myself. Now, if I have a day where I feel really weak, I will skip the gym entirely. So I'm not skipping the gym because I have cramps. I'm just saying, you know what, my body's tired. This is a time where it needs to heal because I'm literally bleeding. So I'm going to heal, I'm going to rest. And when I feel better, I will go to the gym and I can push hard those days. So moving into the follicular phase, this is more where your hormones are still low, especially your testosterone. So it can cause you to have low stamina. So you might get tired quicker. Now, for someone who has PCOS or who has higher androgens, you might not feel like that. For example, in my follicular phase, I actually feel like my energy levels are pretty good. Usually once I come out of my period, I feel like I can push it. And that's because for me, I typically lean towards the higher androgen or testosterone side because of my PCOS. So this is usually a time where I will actually take advantage and do my heavy lifting, okay? So for me personally, my follicular phase is because my higher testosterone and androgen levels, I'm going to usually lift the highest and feel the best during this time. So I might be hitting my PRs during this time. But for the average woman who has a normal cycle, your follicular phase is typically where you want to do lighter cardio, maybe like a stepper, a treadmill, maybe go for a bike ride. And then if you're going to try to do stuff in the gym, I like to focus on just like really more like a weightlifting where you can take a break between your sets, not doing like crazy high intense cardio sessions. Don't go doing sprints, things like that. So you want to focus on like slower movements, light cardio, like taking your time. Think about it that way. And just because, again, your stamina is typically lower in your follicular phase, so you might not be able to last as long. If you were to do sprints, you might do much less than you would normally do and be like, why am I not getting so far at this time? And it's just because your stamina is naturally lower during this time. So lighter cardio, lift your weights, but do something that's slower versus trying to get like a HIIT workout in. Now the ovulatory phase, this is typically where you could opt for like your circuit or high intensity exercises, as your energy is usually much higher during your ovulation. I find this to be the case for me as well. So for me personally, and most women, because our ovulatory phase is where our bodies are literally ready to produce and get pregnant, our energy levels are higher. Usually our appetite's bigger or greater. Our mood is usually better during ovulation. So usually ovulation is like a great time for most women. And this is where you can do the higher intensity things. I love doing my circuits during this time. So this is where I'll get like a 30-minute circuit in or a good, really epic boxing session, and I feel my best. And I feel like I can push harder. I can go longer before I feel like I'm going to like die. I will also, again, be hitting PRs usually during this time. That being said, if you are a woman who has ovarian cysts, a lot of times during ovulation is where you will actually feel your worst. Not with your energy or anything like that, but the pain will be bad around your ovaries during this time because of the increased blood flow. You're going to have probably significant pain. So you might not want to be doing heavy lifting, hip thrusts with a heavy weight over your abdomen or things like that, because you're probably, or over your pelvis, you're probably going to have, if you have PCOS and cysts, discomfort around this time. So you also want to be listening to your body. For me, it's dependent on the month. If I really am taking care of my stress levels and really eating well, I won't have ovarian cysts, so I'll feel good and ovulation's great, and I will push myself with circuits. I will push myself with trying to hit my PRs with my weightlifting, and I'll feel great. if I'm having a month where I did have higher stress levels and maybe ate more sugar than I should have, and so I have some ovarian cyst pain, I am going so gentle. I'm literally walking on the treadmill because I'm not going to want to burst the cysts. I'm not going to want to lift heavy or put anything on my pelvis. It's going to be a really slow and, again, healing time for me. I might be using the sauna a lot more. So take it month by month and go with how you feel. I can tell you're going to probably feel more energized during your ovulatory phase, but if you are physically feeling more tired, honor your body's cues and rest. So you're also going to have to tweak it for your personal hormonal balance. The final phase is the luteal phase. So in the luteal phase, your body is preparing for another period or cycle. Your energy levels might be low. You might be doing light to moderate exercise. Now, again, for me personally, my luteal phase is typically where I feel pretty good. And so again, I'll be trying to get those good workouts in. I'll go and do like some really good leg days or upper body days. If I'm weightlifting, if I'm doing circuit training, I'm pulling out the sleds, the battle ropes, the ski erg, box jumps. I'm going to go do those things where I can push myself and not worry about super fatigue or dizziness or low iron or any of those things. So my time typically where I feel the best would be my ovulatory and luteal phase. However, because your body is preparing for another period or cycle, you don't want to ignore the fact that your period's coming up, because you want to make sure your body has enough energy to focus on the period. So the few days before my period is going to come in my luteal phase, so we're typically talking like, say your cycle is a 30-day cycle. I'm going to say days like 25 to 30 before you get your next period, I will start to take it easy. So again, more walks on the treadmill, or I'll go and do some light stepper for cardio. And if I'm going to do some like weightlifting, it's going to be like more compound movements that are a little bit more gentle. Nothing that's going to be like no crazy deadlifts or something that's super heavy that's going to put pressure on my pelvic floor. It's going to be more of a lighter, gentler weightlifting types of workouts. So again, you're going to take it month by month. But to recap, during your menstrual phase, this is where light movements are the best. You can do some gentle Pilates. You can do just walking. You can lay in your bed and rest, whatever works for you. Your follicular phase is where you can start to move into some of the lighter cardios. You might feel a little bit more tired because your stamina might be lower, because your testosterone typically is lower in the follicular phase. So this is where you can do some light jogging, again, walking on an incline on the treadmill. If you're going to lift weights, just do nothing like insanely heavy lifting. You might not be successful at hitting a PR during this time. As you move into your ovulatory and your luteal phases, this is where you can probably start to lift heavier, feel better in terms of your strength goals and the types of workouts like circuit training that, you know, where you can push yourself essentially. That's kind of what you can look forward to in the second half of the cycle. The few days before and leading up to your period, you might start having those PMS symptoms. If you have a hormonal irregularity, you might start feeling moody, irritable. These are the times where you want to take it easy and not disrupt your hormones further. So just go do a gentle walk. At the end of the day, especially for women, you can do no weightlifting for like a couple weeks and just do walking, and that's still really beneficial. Walking is the one thing that helps your metabolism. It helps to keep weight off. It helps to balance your blood sugar. It helps with digestion. It helps with your mood, with your energy, but it doesn't put physical pressure and strain on your body. So if you're going through your cycle and you have ovarian cysts or fibroids, or you have hormonal irregularities, it's not going to impact and cause any negative issues with that. Where we start to see dysregulations from workouts is when we're trying to do really intense workouts. We're pushing ourselves to the max when our body's screaming for us to rest and relax. So that's where we want to be really careful. You hear about a lot of women losing their periods when they start to really get into fitness and work out a lot. A lot of that is from the fact that they're pushing their bodies too hard during the rest periods where they should be resting, but also their nutrition. So talking about nutrition, it's not something that I'm going to go into a lot of depth in, but I will touch on a few things shortly. I'm going to explain some things that I think is really important when you're focusing on your nutrition. If a big goal for you is to build your body, to build muscle, to lean out, you don't want to do it the typical way that you hear the average fitness influencer online telling you to do it, because you may have hormonal issues as a result. So I'll circle back to that shortly. But just to touch on a little bit more on the fitness side of things, I want you to just focus on exercising based around how you feel during your cycle. So I gave you rough guidelines of how you might feel during your cycle, but of course it can change from woman to woman. And at the end of the day, depending on the hormonal imbalance that you have, which is unique to you, and even if you don't have an imbalance, your hormones are still fluctuating uniquely to you, and your thyroid and all the other things, and your sleep routine and patterns. So based on all that, you need to be in tune with your own body. If you wake up and you feel beyond fatigued, you're feeling really tired, don't feel like you need to go to the gym and push hard like the average guy does. You might want to. I know it can be tough when you have goals that you're trying to get. Believe me, I know. But your body's telling you otherwise. I used to try to have that progressive overload every single workout because I want to keep increasing the weights and I wanted to keep growing and building muscle and all the things. But it did give me I did get negative side effects from it. It would cause me to have longer and delayed cycles or periods. And unfortunately, I didn't like it, but I got used to the fact that I'm going to have to fluctuate the weights that I'm lifting. Some days I can go to the gym and hip thrust 260 easy all day. And then the next time I'm going and I'm doing like 150, and that's difficult. Or sometimes I can go and do 420 on the leg press. And then other days I'm coming in and I'm like, oh, 300 or 200 pounds is too much. So it's really varies, and it can be hard when a few days you're stacking the plates on and you feel great, like you're making progress. And then the next time you come in and you're taking plates off and you're like, what? But for us females, that's just how it goes with our body. As long as you are showing up to the gym, you're eating sufficient protein and micronutrients, you're getting proper rest, you're going to see progress within your body. If you want to push it to its limits and really have a bodybuilding physique, if you want to have like be extremely lean, if you're trying to do competitions and things like that, you have to expect that there are going to be hormonal irregularities. There's unfortunately no way around it. If you choose to still go through with it knowing that there will be a hormonal imbalances as a result, that's totally fine. It's up to you. It's your body. You can 100% do what you would like, but there is, in my opinion, no way to go about body competitions or being like full-on bodybuilding as a female without those negative side effects. So for your menstrual cycle, rest is key. You want to pamper yourself, focus on your yin energy, okay? Do like gentle workouts, stretching, Pilates, do like deep core workouts instead, like transverse abdominis work, things like that. Go for a beautiful, relaxing walk through nature rather than pushing yourself. In the follicular phase, you want to keep exercising, but do things like hiking, light jogging, or, some kind of more incline walk. If you're going to lift weights, don't try to hit a PR during this time. This is where you're going to just lift your weights, get your workouts done, but don't try to push beyond your limits, as your stamina will typically be lower during this phase. Once you get to your ovulation phase, this is where we are all feeling like queens. We're feeling fantastic. Our energy's high. Your testosterone and energy are peaking. So this is maximizing your potential. You can try exercises like high intensity interval workouts, circuit training, those intense spin classes. You can try to hit PRs if you're lifting, and you should be able to do all those things. And then your final phase is the luteal phase. This is where your temperature is usually peaked. And during this time, progesterone is on the rise, but testosterone and estrogen start to drop a bit. So this is the best time for strength training, Pilates, more intense versions of the typical workout that you're doing. Usually you'll have good enough energy to get through some pretty intense workouts and probably hit a bunch of PRs during this time. And the few days before your menstrual cycle and then your menstrual cycle itself, you want to do lighter stuff again to prepare your body. It's always important to listen to your body, do what feels good. If you feel like, oh, I have high energy today, I feel great, I can push myself a little harder, go for it. But if you do have that feeling where you need to back off a bit, you're feeling really dizzy, really weak, really tired during certain times in your cycle, it is okay to take your foot off the gas with your fitness and listen to your body. So being a nutritionist and homeopathic practitioner, I really like to focus on food and utilizing that as medicine to help support our menstrual cycle and symptoms. Many times I see women will just kind of eat the same foods on a regular basis. They'll meal prep and it'll be like the same 5-6 meals every day of the week. I do not recommend that. We have different ratios of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and they fluctuate greatly throughout the month. And so our body does require different nutritional needs and also detoxification needs at that time. So switching up what we're eating on a week-to-week basis or even day-to-day, to me, is really crucial to supporting our body and doing what we call cycle syncing. Imbalances in our hormones are definitely triggered by inflammatory foods, by stress, by poor sleep. So for me, the biggest thing is throughout your entire cycle, you really do need to limit and try to remove fully sugar and alcohol and inflammatory processed foods and a lot of caffeine from your diet, but especially during your menstrual phase. Eating sugars and caffeine and alcohol during our menstrual phase can really disrupt our hormones throughout the rest of the cycle. You want to focus on eating whole foods throughout your cycle to help balance your hormones. Eating every 3 to 4 hours can help you keep your blood sugar stable and avoid the cortisol spikes and mood swings. And you want to also focus on eating sufficient protein, but also get your micronutrients, assorted as well. I'm going to share with you some things to eat, but before I do, one thing that to me is really bothersome when I go online, because I'm a holistic practitioner, I really get frustrated when I see fitness influencers sharing what they eat in a day and influencing young girls who don't know any better for their bodies. And so they copy what they see online and then are getting hormonal imbalances as a result. I see so many fitness influencers, they wake up in the morning and they have like 2 Greek yogurts that are typical generic, loaded with hormones and not organic or grass-fed or anything like that. They're going to have a lot of sugar in them. And then they're going and having a whey protein powder, which is heavy on the dairy. And then they come home to have chicken breast and cottage cheese, which is heavy on the dairy. And then for dinner, they're doing tacos with more cheese, fat-free cheese and beef, lean ground beef. And I'm watching their diet and I'm seeing very, very little healthy fats that are going to support your cycle and our hormones. Listen, our hormones need cholesterol. Our hormones are need fat to make up our hormones and the cholesterol that our body needs. So how are we supposed to have a lot of hormone production, have the good HDL cholesterol production and all those things if we are not eating fats? So we have to have the fats. As a female, we have to have the fats, period. They also help our brain and our mood and all the other things, our cells, our metabolic health. But I see a lot of fitness influencers run so far away from fat and they do fat-free everything and they focus so much on dairy, which is so inflammatory for women's hormones, and especially like the typical generic non-grass-fed dairies. And then I see the very little nutrition. A lot of the stuff that they're eating are processed. A processed protein shake like Premier Protein or something similar. And then they're having these protein powders that are full of garbage and chemicals. And then they're eating like protein chips that are full of garbage and chemicals, or protein bars that are full of, gut dysregulating and endocrine disrupting ingredients. And I don't see many veggies and nutrients. So I would like to say for anyone listening, please, please, please don't follow the average fitness influencer's diet and say this is going to work for me, because most likely it's going to cause issues in the long run. It's not just important to focus on being lean and looking at which foods are fitting your macros. You need to be focusing on the micro and on the ingredients that are going to disrupt your hormones and your gut. Because in the long run, our hormones are what are keeping us, if they're in balance, it's what keeping us lean, energized, healthy, glowing skin, healthy, thick hair. If you start having hormonal imbalances, you're going to feel depleted, look more pale, start losing your hair, start gaining weight around your belly in the long run, and so much more. So it's important to take care of our hormones now and not just obsess about losing weight and hitting the macros, okay? So what should we be eating? Well, during our menstrual cycle, your estrogen is on the rise. So I like to have soothing teas. Chamomile is really, really great. It can help with cramps as well. I like to get a lot of magnesium in around this time. I really want to limit alcohol, caffeine, and salty foods, and instead focus on a lot of cruciferous vegetables that are cooked. You can roast them, steam them. Healthy, good quality proteins like chicken breast, lamb, beef. Get some good carbs, complex carbs, but low starch carbs like quinoa, buckwheat, lentils, berries, grapefruits, green apples. Okay, so focus on getting those good foods in. And then healthy fats would be coming from some avocado, nuts, and seeds like hemp hearts. During the follicular phase, I really like to incorporate, flax and chia seeds for that seed cycling. I like to incorporate foods that will metabolize estrogen. So again, those cruciferous vegetables. You can focus on sprouted foods like broccoli sprouts and, having a little bit of fermented food like kimchi, and also get your good amount of protein in. So protein's always a big goal for me, but I like to make sure it's wild caught, organic, grass fed, pasture raised, so some good, soft boiled eggs, things like that. Moving into the ovulatory phase, this is where your estrogen is at an all-time high, testosterone as well. So you should eat foods that support your liver. Okay, you want to focus on anti-inflammatory foods like whole fruits and veggies. You can do like the hemp hearts again. I love those so much. Chia seeds, they pack incredible health benefits. Hemp is really anti-aging. It protects us from environmental toxins that are known to have an impact on your hormones. There are so many incredible benefits to having seeds and also having those healthy fats. So coming back to like wild caught salmon and almonds and Brazil nuts, things that are actually going to be loving our hormones, loving on our hormones. The luteal phase, estrogen and progesterone are both surging and then wane during this period. So we want to eat foods that will produce serotonin. So your leafy greens, your quinoa, your buckwheat. You'll want to focus on magnesium-rich foods that will help fight fatigue and low libido. I like to take a magnesium supplement again during this time. But dark chocolate's a great food option as long as it's not loaded with sugar. Try to get a high quality dark chocolate. I love Giddy Yo-Yo or the Hue Kitchen brand. Spinach, pumpkin seeds, these are great things to eat during this phase because they're also really high in zinc, which is going to help as well. So, and then one last thing I like to do is load up on iron-rich foods as well during my luteal phase. So I like to do like a grass-fed liver capsule supplement, but you can also just get foods that are rich in iron during this time, like beets. So those are some food ideas of things to incorporate during the different cycles. Since the luteal phase is before your period, you really want to focus on eating healthy and avoiding any foods that will trigger discomfort or cramps. So caffeine, sugar, alcohol, and then also I have to throw in, it's not a food, but it elevates inflammation, so it can elevate cramping, and that is stress. Stress tenses the body, it disrupts our nervous system, disrupts our sleep. It can lead to way more cramping during the period. So focus on losing the stress and increasing your sleep. All right. Some luteal phase don'ts to me, again, are alcohol, sodas, juices, carbonated drinks, artificial sweeteners, dairy. Dairy will elevate your inflammation, which will cause much more cramping during your period. So be careful to not overdo like whey protein and cottage cheese and all the typical dairy things that people eat to stay lean. And be careful not doing too much added salt as well. I love salt if it's like a Celtic sea salt or like a Himalayan, but if you're doing straight up table salt, I definitely don't recommend. Now, each person's nutritional requirements are different. One recommendation for one person might not work for the next in their hormonal needs and imbalances or balance. So definitely check with your doctor or practitioner before ever taking any advice and making decisions about your nutrition. The most important takeaway from this is it is so crucial how and what we do Because if we are doing things that are going to elevate our inflammation or strain our body, it's going to disrupt our hormones. And if we continuously do these things, month in and month out, we are going to start to have hormonal irregularities. So it's really important to listen to our bodies. Unfortunately, we can't be out there doing what men do, where they have a very stable hormonal system, mood, and energy throughout the month. It doesn't really fluctuate unless they didn't sleep like the night before or they're sick. But in general, men's hormones are very much regulated, whereas women, because we are the ones that are creating and growing little humans, our hormone systems fluctuate very, very much throughout our cycle. And it's just important to be in tune with our body and learn what workouts to do and how to listen to our body's cues so we can support our body, but still, achieve the goals that we're after. I hope that you learned something today. I hope you found this interesting, beneficial, helpful. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a beautiful day or night, wherever you are listening from, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.